Welcome to the Red Gauge Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Josh. This is Kyle. Today we're joined.
That was fucking backwards. I'm Josh. That's Kyle. It's the end of the school year.
Should we just keep that?
I think we keep that.
All right,
That might
we're
be
just
the
gonna
best
keep
intro
that.
we've ever had right there.
Today we're joined by the illustrious Jared Richmond. So Jared's a multiple-time national medalist in weightlifting. Did I say that name wrong? Did I get it? I did it? Okay,
yeah,
I got it.
you were
Okay, good. I was worried there for a minute. He's the owner of Richmond Elite Performance. He has the Unfair Advantage podcast. He's had a pretty successful weightlifting career in training 150 kilo snatch and 175 clean and jerk. And we're really excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you guys having me on. You've had some good guests on, so the fact that I'm being included is very flattering.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, we always take at the end of every episode, we always kind of ask who should we have on, and you're recommended by multiple people. So
Awesome.
maybe you're doing better than you thought there.
Yeah.
Slap yourself on the back.
Yeah, I try to
Or
keep
they
it
hate
low.
you and they're like, dude, make Jared get on there. He's gonna burn.
Do it.
Shortest episode. It's 11 minutes.
11 minutes, man. That would be a record, huh?
Yeah, and I'm throwing my headphones too. Someone's gonna quit.
So before we even get started, because this is kind of the new thing for us, Kyle knows a lot more because he knows about everything somehow. But were you always into weightlifting? Because so for me, we're not I wouldn't say we're a weightlifting school. Our kids know clean. The kids that get good at that, some of them we teach rudimentary levels of clean and jerk and snatch, and it's a record. The clean and jerk and snatch and Olympic total is a record at our school. But we don't get anything that's like special. It's special for us, right? But like having the 150 snatch, like, was that for you? I guess, how do you ask this question? That's insane for me, like to see a 315 plus snatch. But when we were meeting you, you were like, that was okay. Like, dude, when I saw the photo on your Instagram and I looked at the back and you could see it was like 143, and I'm assuming it was a competition. I was like, God damn, 315 fucking snatch is pretty impressive. Obviously, in the 1%, there are people that do much, much more than that.
Yeah,
but
at least a little bit more.
Yeah, 315 snatches.
Yeah,
is pretty fucking elite.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, I
don't
think
even know what my question was there.
It was more a statement.
I'm
He's just proud of you.
Good
yeah,
job.
Appreciate the support. At the time, it was pretty good. I mean, I only weighed 85 kilos. I've done 145 in competition. So if I would have snatched 150, then you're talking a little bit more on the elite side. But you got to remember, in weightlifting, you can't really compare guys in the U.S. to these other countries. We're playing two different ball games, and I think some people are gonna be like, oh, that's like, it's an excuse. It's not. Like, we're just, we have these guys in Russia, Kazakhstan, doesn't matter. Like, they're all doping, all of them. Not, this isn't like a partial thing. And we have this thing called USADA here in the U.S., and they don't give a fuck. Sorry, I don't know if you can swear on this thing.
Swear as much as you want to.
Okay. USADA doesn't give a fuck who you are. They will pop you. They will test you 1,000 times a year. They'll show up at your house in the middle of the night. They don't care. And if you're using shit in the U.S. In weightlifting, like, you're doing a really good job of hiding it. And I mean, if nobody's watched that documentary called Icarus, I mean, it's right. But that is the world that we're living in. And like, RUSADA, the head of RUSADA, was the one helping everyone eat dope.
Helping the cyclists across the country, across the planet. He's like, he just reaches out. He's like, hey, I want to beat this amateur cycling test. He's like, no problem. Send me samples.
You love doping so much.
Exactly.
Random ass guy across the planet. Like,
that is actually, it's kind of one of my favorite things to talk about, because a lot of times people talk about testing as just trying to beat an IQ test. And it's like, I think it gets a lot more granular than that. Like, you have to talk about, like, what country are you in? What sport are you in? What's the anti-doping program that you're in? Because there's obvious evidence that Icarus was just 2016. It wasn't even that long ago, right? When the Sochi Olympics happened. Was it 16 or 18? Whatever.
Sochi was 14.
Yeah,
14. Sochi was 14, 2014. Wasn't that long ago.
Don't ever ask me a question again.
But, like, we know that the testing is pretty good, because the plan that they came up with was to cut a hole in the wall and switch the samples out, right? So like it wasn't like they were trying to beat the test by, you know, masking it or running special compounds or whatever, right? They were trying to beat the test by physically replacing the athlete urine with somebody else's, right? And like I think that goes to show like how good the testing actually can be, you know. And so in the nations where there is no state sponsored thing and they do actually follow through on testing and there is random out of meet testing and there is a penalty for skipping it, I don't know how somebody goes about getting ahead of that whole program, you know.
No, I mean, I've been drug tested multiple times. You can go on USADA's website and you can look up how many times everybody's been tested. I mean, literally, you can see everything. And like, you can go look at like Maddie Rogers. I think she's been tested hundreds of times. I mean, it's just it's insane, like how often these people are getting tested. I cannot feasibly understand how anybody would be beating it here in the US for at least a long period of time, right? Like Maddie's been doing this for like a decade. I don't know how she's beaten it for a decade. You know, you might beat it for a year or two. I don't know, maybe, but you're not going to be able to do it for very long.
Yeah, and that's another thing, right? That your B samples get archived for like 8 years. So even
Yep.
if you add some designer thing or masking
Right.
agent or something, if they figure out a test between now and 8 years from now, they come back and they take away your entire competitive history, you know? So like,
Well, that's what the whole thing with Icarus was, right?
Mhm.
That guy basically changed the sport of weightlifting for sure. I mean, he changed all sports, but he said, hey, you know, when he got caught, he made a deal and said like, hey, go test all those B samples from I think it would be 2028 or sorry, 2008 and 2012 Olympics. And he said, and test for this particular thing. And I bet you'll find a lot of positives. And I want to say like in 2012, the top 7 guys in like my weight class all popped.
Yeah.
So like the 8th place guy got a retroactive gold, right? So it's like, you
What
know,
a like kind of horrific thing that is too as a competitor. Like there's that same story. Adam Nelson, the U.S. shot putter, went through that where
hmm
he came in silver or bronze, and then there was some test, and he got his gold medal in an airport. Like they just
airport Chick-fil-A, I think, or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
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 in
right,
a brown paper sack
yeah.
is what yeah.
And so like you know you train your entire life, you are literally the best in the world. You know somebody comes in and pulls the rug out from under you, and then you find out years later that no, you actually were the best in the world. And especially like in his case, if people don't know the story, Adam Nelson got dropped by Nike. So Nike was sponsoring him. I'm pretty sure it was Nike. Don't sue me, Nike, if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure he's you know sponsored by Nike. They dropped him. They thought he was past his prime, and he was like going to shirts or going to competitions with shirts that said like you know sponsor me. You know your ad goes here or whatever, trying to find a new sponsor. And you know he just had like like a much harder career than than his pedigree would have ever led you to believe. And so like those kinds of things are really difficult. So I can't imagine coming in 8th place and being like you're like, well, I made it to Worlds, that was pretty good, I'm not the
hmm
best, and then come back later on, they're like, no, actually you were.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's almost why like for me, my goal was to win a national championship. You know, whatever happened after that, you know, I'd love to go compete at the Pan American Games or, you know, one of those international events, maybe a bronze level international event. But I kind of knew with, you know, originally the goal is the Olympics, but you start to become less naive as things go on, and so yeah, my goal is always to say, hey, if I win a national championship, that means that I'm the best at the against the guys that I'm playing the same game as.
Yeah. Did you ever get to a point where you were counting like out of season, like piss tests or anything? Because I remember, I
Yeah.
think as far as out of season, one of my best, I think it was Rich Froning, the CrossFit
Hmm.
superstar, and he was talking about like one time like they knocked on his door at like 5 in the morning, and he like sat on his couch until he woke up again, and then like followed him to a classroom, and he's like finally like 4 hours later had to piss, and they were like, all right, we're
Yeah.
here. It's like you're not getting out of my sight for as long as you are. It's like that's fucking. I mean, that's what you would have to do, right?
Hmm.
But that's crazy how dedicated they are to make sure that they can catch you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say they don't fuck around. Like the first time I got tested was in competition, but it was after the meet, and you go into this room, and they got Gatorades and waters everywhere because they want to make you pee. And I was super young. I think I was like 20 or 21. And finally I was like, okay, plus you're kind of dehydrated because you cut weight. So you're having trouble feeling like you got to pee. But they say, you can't leave the room basically, or if you do, we got to go with you. They will set out a bunch of cups in front of you that are all in the plastic wrap, and then you have to choose the cup, because they don't want you to be able to say, "Hey, we gave him like a tampered cup."
Tainted cup. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So you choose the cup that you're gonna use, and then you have to be the one that takes it out of the plastic wrap. Like they can't touch anything. And then like I remember going down to the bathroom, and the guy standing, he's just staring at my dick, just directly at it, right? And I'm like, again, I'm like 21 years old, I think.
Yeah.
I remember.
It makes it more difficult to pee.
No, I think I was 19 actually. I was super young, and I'm like, yeah, I've never had that before. And I literally we stood there for like 5 minutes, and the guy finally is like, we can come back, and I was like, let's do that. Zipped it back up, went back in the room, drank some more water. But then they're like, oh, you can't drink too much water because then if your sample's too diluted, then that doesn't count either, and we got to do it all over again, right? So you're kind of screwed either way on that. And then you're done, and you remember you're carrying the cup. You're the only one that can touch the cup, and then you got these 2 glass jars, and you got to pour a certain amount in each jar, and then you lock them down. And when you lock them down, there's this locking mechanism that they talk about that in Icarus a little bit, but I don't know how on earth you're getting the tops off of these things. I mean, they are just like, wound so tight. So it's crazy, man. Like they do not mess around, and I don't know how you're passing those tests.
Yeah.
If no one, I obviously got piss tested for other reasons, but I was in the military, and when I tried to I was in the infantry, and I tried to be a ranger, and the ranger piss test was you just stood there, and there was a guy, it was a drill sergeant on a catwalk. So he was raised his feet were about eye level, and he would just kind of come over and like put his face down into your face and stare right at your dick. And it's just like, I don't know how I'm supposed to pee in this condition.
Exactly.
Right? There's an angry man just staring straight down, talking shit. It's like, oh, that's what they grow in the Northwest, I see. And it's like, dude, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, man. Like I get it. It's crazy. And also just think that's like, that guy's name was Bill, and that's his job every day.
Uh-huh.
And he's like,
Yeah.
Can you please pee? I've been looking at your dick for 5 minutes. Please, like, can we finish this step, sir?
That's awesome.
But yeah.
I've heard some really great stories about that. We got to try to get Reese Hoffa on the show. I just remembered. I'm gonna write
it down. Well, I don't recognize the name, so I don't know if this is a piss test guy, a dick looker, or
He's a thrower.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Another thrower. Yeah.
One of three.
Yeah.
One of 3 things.
Yeah. One of 3.
Guy
Has to
really
be.
likes looking at dicks. Got to get him on.
I wonder what that's like what that interview process is, where you're like, hey, you saw us hiring for a field specialist or something, and you're like, I need a job.
But
That's funny.
On the other side, so I got to job shadow a little bit. I was trying to host some meets for the USAPL powerlifting.
Yep.
And so you got to go and you kind of got to do a little bit of everything. And one thing was to do the like selection for the top 10%, get piss tested. And I won't lie, like this is why it works so well, because that is fun as hell to be like 16 400-pound bench, test them, like you know what I mean, like look at the shoulders on that guy, test that guy right there.
Random.
Yeah, it's like randomly I've never had that power. You always just assume, you know what I mean? Oh, you're strong as hell. Like, that guy kind of looked at me weird. Test his ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how many do I get? 6? Okay, there's your 6. So
They say it's random, but I've never been tested at a meet that I did poorly at. Let's just say that.
I mean, that was literally, they gave it to a guy and was like, please go get 6. So I guess I didn't just go first, but I bet you the people that I picked all got first.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't pick scrawny guy that I didn't even remember lifting. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it was just the impressive people.
You're at a powerlifting meet, and there's like a 53-year-old accountant who just needs some exercise, and he had a 400 total, and you're like, test that guy.
Test him.
That's the guy that might pop, though. You never know, man.
Yeah.
I've heard people go like, I've heard that thinking like, listen, I'm not going to do well enough to get tested. And it's like, dude, you do not want to. So the USAPL, if you fail a test, your name goes to the very top of the results. and it shows that you pissed hot right there, and it's like, and then you get the ban, like at
Mhm.
least a 2-year ban. It's like the shame. Just don't. Just don't. There's so many federations that you could take
Yes.
steroids in and lift like
Yeah.
that. No one would care, and most people on the planet wouldn't know
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? Like, no, most people don't go like, "Is that an untested federation?" They would just be like, "Hey, congratulations, Kyle!
Yeah.
You did a good job. Good
Yeah.
lifts."
Yeah. Sick.
Yeah, we went to my buddy. He's one of the top powerlifters, and I guess it's not USAPL anymore. Or he does a different federation. What's the other clean one
Powerlift
now?
America.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were the ones that
Anyways,
split off.
when he first started out, we did a local meet, and it was a non-tested federation, and he still went in and crushed everybody. But when you went in the bathroom, that like container in there that has like the hazardous
the
materials,
sharps
dude,
container,
just fucking filled. I've never seen anything like it. Just filled to the fucking brim with syringes. I mean, it was insane. I'm like, these people are a different breed.
We had our coach started lifting in like the late 40s, the coach who introduced us to the weight room. And he would tell me the story about being Mr. Nebraska competitor. So in the 50s, he would regularly compete at Mr. Nebraska. And he was like in 50, I think it was like 58 or 59, he competed. And then he took a year off and he came back for like the 61 year. And he was like, the whole game was different. Like people were just injecting themselves backstage. Like it went from just not a thing. Like it wasn't, no, everybody looked like a human, you know, nobody had terrible acne, you know, nobody was freaking out or having a bad time or whatever. It was just a bunch of guys who like lifting weights. And then he came back 2 years later and it was like 80% of the dudes were taking steroids and, you know, just using needles backstage. And
I would love to know. I would love to see a study. Obviously, you probably couldn't do this in any way, but like backstage, like what's the boost there? You know what I mean? You've probably been
I've
on a
seen it.
cycle. You know what I mean? But
I saw
just
it
don't
at
know,
that powerlifting meet.
like, I just
Somebody's
don't
doing it.
get. Well, I mean, even Arnold. It's like
Uh-huh.
in one of Arnold's, they were like, "When do you stop your cycle?" And he's like, "When I'm walking onto the stage."
Yeah.
Like I pull the needle out, and it's like I always wondered, like, what benefit are you getting from that last syringe? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
That's
just
true.
strange. Like you
That's
got to
bizarre.
fly that shit
Well, I
across the
know
country.
like a big part of the motivation for testing in the first place was to try to get people to stop taking amphetamines because they're like having heart attacks
Yeah.
or whatever, I assume. And so, you know, maybe they aren't taking steroids, maybe they're just taking stimulants or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's outside of my wheelhouse. I don't have any expertise
know.
in substance use.
To better know about this, I'll just get onto a cycle. You know what I mean? And just get gigantic.
Have you guys talked to Max Ada yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
He was
Max.
the one that kicked this whole thing off. Actually, he was our
Actually, so
Yeah.
Max
Yeah.
was my coach for a long time. So, but he would have the best stories for drugs. Man, he's got some crazy ones because he lived with Abijah for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His stories,
so-
all of his stories were awesome.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
just
he's
he
great.
just put out one. I think it was on the Coach Logic podcast that they do. Shout out for Zach
Yeah.
and Max right there.
Yeah.
But he talked about giving the hug. Remember?
Mhm.
I don't know if you saw that clip, but I don't remember who it was, but it was some like great Olympic lifter, and he went to go give him a
I
hug,
think it was Ilya.
and he
Oh, yes.
he went to shake his hand, and he dipped the hand, gave him a hug, told him goodbye, and then they got in the same fucking
In the car, yeah.
It's like that guy's funny as hell, man.
He
Yeah.
is. He's awesome.
Yeah. So
All right, should we start the podcast? Jay? We haven't even asked the first question.
So, how did you get into like how did your rise happen? How'd you get into weightlifting?
Yeah, so I'm from a small town in Illinois. I'm in the Quad Cities, which is like two of the cities are in Illinois, two are in Iowa. I actually live on the Iowa side now, but it's just right on the Mississippi River. And then I'm from a small town of like 1,600 people. And so all you do in small towns, at least where I'm from, is you play sports basically. So growing up, my dad played college basketball. Believe it or not, I'm like 5'8", and that was my sport. So, and he was the same. But anyway, so yeah, we played basketball growing up, played baseball, golf, football, played a bunch of sports. Main one in high school was basketball. I still played all the other ones, but I was an all-state basketball player. But again, I'm 5'8", pretty light complexion. And so there was only so many opportunities post high school for me. My wife and we've been together since we were 14 years old. So
Oh, that's awesome.
we were going to go to college together, and I don't think she was super keen on going to JUCO to, help me play basketball. So yeah, I decided to go to a bigger school, went to the University of Illinois, Chicago. And then when I got there, kind of needed something to do and competitively because I didn't know anything else. And that's when this is going to be the most cliche answer, but found CrossFit like everybody does when they first start, it seems like. Did that fairly competitively for about 3 years. And then I was like, you know what, my weightlifting numbers would qualify me for the American Open finals, which or at the time it was just called the American Open. I was like, I'll do a meet and see what happens. And when qualified for that, and I said, okay, well, I think for the next 3 months I'm just gonna do weightlifting until American Open happens, and afterwards I'll go back to CrossFit. And then at the American Open, that was when I got drug tested for the first time because I did really well. And that's usually when you see the drug testing is when guys come out of nowhere. Like,
Right.
they had never heard of me before and I did pretty well. So, then I was like, all right, well, I'm pretty good at this. So I'll do this until nationals because I qualified for nationals at the American Open. So I think that was another 5 or 6 months away. Did that, did only weightlifting until nationals. And then I think at my first nationals, I took fifth. And I was like, all right, this is just way more fun. I just hate all that cardio shit. Right. So, finally I kind of basically gave in to what I'd been wanting to do the whole time and just went strictly weightlifting for a while. Had a pretty, I'd say like, I don't know, short, hot and short career. Like I was probably one of the most up and coming weightlifters for a little while. I was really young when I got good, but my biggest problem was one, I think, I'm just not genetically built like a lot of weightlifters are. Like I'm built to be more of like, I just say an athlete. Like I don't weightlifting, you guys as powerlifters,
Short limbs and stuff,
yeah, exactly. You guys as weightlifters might think, or as powerlifters might think weightlifters are more athletic, but like it's still, super short limb guys. If you told them to run a 40, they would run it in like 10 seconds, right? Like I
They could
have
probably
long,
jump a 40 faster, like just
exactly, right? So I have longer legs, shorter torso. So I'm not super built for it. My mobility's not incredible. So I ran into some issues there, and basically I had to train really, really, really hard to see the progress that I saw. And basically I felt like to me, you have these two lines essentially, and this is an oversimplification of it, but basically you have this line here is like, if you train this hard, you get hurt. And then if you train this hard, you get better. And so you want to kind of be in between these lines, right? Well, eventually the lines became on top of each other. Basically, like I had to train this hard to get any better. And if I trained that hard, I also got hurt.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's kind of when you hit like some sort of a genetic limit. So yeah, had a really quick, probably couple year good career. And then, also I was relatively older for the sport from, when I started. Like I didn't start competing in weightlifting till I was like 19, 20 years old. A lot of the top guys are starting when they're in their early teens. And then the thing is, like, a lot of people think it's about your absolute age, which don't get me wrong. Like I just turned 30 and my body feels a lot different now than it did when I was 20. But it's really about your responsibilities in life. Like when I was in college, I could train all the time because I didn't have to pay any bills, right? I didn't have anything else going on, right? And then, so my point is, right after that national championships, I graduated college. I had to kind of figure life out after that. And I think that's where a lot of people, I wasn't going to be the guy who was only a weightlifter, like almost like a starving artist. I just wasn't going to be me. So I first started my e-commerce business called Richmond Weightlifting. And we're kind of known for our leather wrist straps that we sell, and that funded my gym. And yeah, now I'm an old man basically trying to pay the bills.
How much fun was it to start a business where you made wrist wraps? Did you like buy a sewing machine and hang out at home and like sew till 1 in the morning every
buy
day?
some cows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leather.
That's a good question. I've outsourced the production of those since the start.
Smart.
I am not a, leather worker. Basically that's actually a kind of an interesting story if you guys have a second.
Yeah.
So when I first got into weightlifting or CrossFit, I guess, I just was self-taught and my technique was horrible. And so after my freshman year of college, I came home and it was my first week home from college, and I went to my high school gym, right, with my buddies. Which, by the way, I did not train at all in high school. I was a basketball player. I maybe did some curls and some bench every once in a while. We didn't do any training. Our high school did not have any sort of training. Now they do, and we actually help out with it now. But at the time, there was nothing, and especially not for basketball players. So I didn't train at all. But now I'm back in the high school weight room with a couple buddies, and I'm trying to show off. Like, I went from this guy who didn't lift in high school to now I was able to clean, I think, 265 pounds or something like that. And I went for a 275-pound clean. And mind you, I didn't make contact at the time. Like, I didn't know how to make contact with the bar. So I threw the bar up and I went to catch it in like a squat clean, and my elbow hit my knee and I snapped my wrist. Like literally just the whole gym could hear it. Broke my scaphoid. I called my now wife and said, "Hey, I broke my wrist. I need to go to the doctor." And um, it sucks because she had bought me a gym membership. This is kind of sorry, I'm taking some turns here, but basically
Go for it. Go for it.
Far
she
off as possible.
she was all pissed at me because my birthday was a few days later. She's like, "I bought you a gym membership for your birthday," and it was to a CrossFit gym in the area. Well, I now own that gym. That is my gym, so it's kind of cool. But anyways, um,
How much was that out of opportunity and some like spite? Like, did they not let you refund it or something? Like,
they actually, I
can
think they
see the
did.
refund, you're like,
It was
"Oh,
her. That's a good question. I think they did actually, and I was surprised that they did. It was through opportunity, right? It's like it's not the same gym anymore, but it's the same building.
Right.
But there are a lot of gyms in our area, so the fact that it is that gym is kind of crazy. So anyways, yeah, broke my wrist, was in a cast for 3 months. I broke my scaphoid, which I don't know if you know anything about it. It's a real small bone that doesn't get a lot of blood flow,
Yeah,
so it
it's a
doesn't.
real problem. A lot of people end up having to get bone grafts and stuff to get it fixed up.
Yep. Luckily, mine was snapped right in half. You could see the line right down the middle. It healed really nicely, but I was in a cast for 3 months. Um, and then you guys will get a kick out of this. So, what does a dumb college kid do when he breaks his wrist? He's like, "I'm going to Google the hardest squat program I possibly can because that's
Uh-huh.
all I can do."
You
So,
just went small
I,
off
I
first.
ran small off. Exactly. I ran small off. So, and at the time, I did not like to squat, right? But I started getting into it a little bit. So I think my squat was around 315 when I started small off. I literally squatted 395, I want to say, like 12 weeks later. Like, so the point is though, I went straight to like very high volume training, and I don't think that helped me long term. I think that maybe made those two lines that we talked about earlier become on top of each other quicker than they had to have. But anyway, so all I could do is squat, put my hands like on the side of the bar, like Mark Bell squats, basically, like have it, kind of pinch with the cast. Um, and then when I got out of the cast, it honestly hurt more than when I was going into the cast because it was so stiff from like the 3 months that I was in it, and then just all the tendons and stuff that you destroy. So when I got out of the cast, I still could not lift without a ton of pain. And so I bought all kinds of different wrist straps and tried them all out, and some of them worked fine, but the big thing was I had to tighten them down so tight, and then I'd have to take them off each set, and it was just a kind of a pain in the ass. Anyways, I went to a meet. I competed at the Arnold in 2017, and there was a guy there that had a pair of leather wrist straps, um, and I was kind of like, "Hey, where'd you get those?" And he gave me this email to this like obscure email address. He's like, "They're from ZKC, but they don't make them anymore or something like that, and they only give them to the like Olympic team." I don't know how he got them. So I emailed this email address, and I didn't hear back for like a month. Finally, I heard back, and the lady in broken English was like, "Hi, we have one pair laying around, but it has a little bit of rusty on the pricker." That was what she said. And I'm like, what does that mean, bro? And she sends me a picture, and it's just like a little rust on the buckle or something, right? On the little metal buckle of the wrist strap. So I was like, all right, fine. I don't care. I'll take them. Well, how do I pay for them? Because they didn't have a website. There was nothing I could do. She goes, go to our AliExpress store and buy $70 worth of items and send me like the screenshot of you doing that. So I go over there thinking it's gonna be like fitness stuff. Nope, it's all children's clothing. And I'm getting scammed for
You're
sure.
on a list for sure.
Right? I'm getting scammed.
Buying children's clothing right now. Like,
But I'm desperate, right? My wrist is killing me. Like I need these wrist straps. So I do it, send it. I don't get anything for a long time in the mail. I'm like, I'm getting scammed for sure. Finally, they came in the mail. And I was like, wow, okay. And anyways, they helped a lot, but there was some flaws that I saw with them and some ways that I thought we could make them better. So I started reaching out to suppliers and drawing up. I have so many like sketched out pieces of paper that I just have laying around and just kind of sketching things out. I think I probably had 20 different prototypes at this point. And anyways, now we have, multiple Olympians, from all across the world that wear our wrist straps because they are the best wrist strap. Dude, I'm telling you, if I could get these things sanctioned by like IPF or whatever, every single powerlifter would have them. They're crazy.
So I gotta ask, because I used to work in R&D and I used to do prototyping.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have just a great time sharing your illustrations with people who were supposed to be then making prototypes for you, or was that an absolute train wreck?
Well, they have no idea what like half of it was, right? And if I'm being honest, like we don't make them here in the U.S., so let's just say that the language barrier was difficult.
yeah,
So
I mean, we started. We understand that. Like we
Yeah.
understand the language barrier. That's
Yeah.
how this whole venture started. So
So I remember making a piece, and like I would make all the prototypes, and then I'd send them to a production people and be like, "Hey, this is the prototype that we want to do, right?" And so this time it was an in-house production. So the lady was like, she literally was just 50 feet away from me. I could go talk to her anytime, and I sent her like diagrams with all the measurements and units and everything, and it was all like there's I forget what the term is now, but where you draw it from like 3 different angles, and they all come with all the specifications. I wrote steps. I was like, this is how you make it. Like you have to start here and go here because the way that you put stuff together, right? And it turned into like a 3-week thing to get one made by the production team, and I was like, I don't know what to do right now. Like I'm just
can you just let me in?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'll make it. Like
I'll just make all of them. Just change my job. I don't want to do R&D anymore. This is frustrating.
well,
But that
and
was experience.
you're a math guy, so you probably had these really nice diagrams, like, and I'm just on a piece of paper just sketching it out, right? And I'm sending them pictures of it, and then they're sending it to me, and it looks nothing like the picture at all. And so that's why I had to go through 20 prototypes because they would get maybe like a slightly bit closer every time, and then they would change stuff that I didn't say to change. I'm like, no, I just want you to do this. You had this right, and now you fucked this up, right? And so it just went back and forth for a bunch. But I'm very happy with our current supplier, our product. I think, and that I let that business, honestly. I'm trying to revive Richmond weightlifting. It's my first business. It's something that I've definitely let take a back seat since I opened my gym. And but it's just there's such a good product there that we don't do a ton of marketing, and we still just get so many referrals. So
Yeah.
is there like a target group without saying like every single person, maybe that's the answer is but anybody that wears a wrist wrap, like is there a certain group that would benefit from getting those more specifically, like people with wrist issues? Because like lots of people wear wrist wraps. There's plenty of kids that are in the weight room that they're like, I need a wrist wrap. And I'm like, no, you don't. You're fine. This 114-pound bench is not going to affect your wrist. You're
Right.
fine. Just go bench it. But like, who would you say is like a target? Is it anybody just with wrist pain?
yeah, I mean, definitely weightlifters. the powerlifter I mentioned before, we have a lot of powerlifters at our gym that wear our stuff just in training, because it's so nice because you don't have to take it on and off. It's going to provide a ton of support, but you can leave it on your whole workout. I would say, what you're saying makes a ton of sense. Like none of our youth athletes wear them, but when you become an elite athlete, I think there's some precautionary things that you should do. So I would say anybody, like if I wish I was wearing them when I broke my wrist, I probably wouldn't have broke it, right? So I think if you're gonna start doing stuff seriously, there's a video of Mikhail Koklaev on the internet somewhere, and I think he was doing like a seminar at Super Training with Mark Bell, and they asked, like, somebody asked, like, how do you feel about knee sleeves and wrist wraps and, like, all this different stuff, and he goes, "You only have one health." Right, and in his Russian accent, and what he meant was like you only have one body, right? Like and that kind of changed my outlook on it. Was like I was very like, oh, I don't need this. It's like, well, no, you don't need it, but it's there, and it could potentially like add some longevity to you, and also you're allowed to use it in the competition. So there is some specificity to using it in training. So yeah, I would say people with wrist issues for sure. But to be honest, in my opinion, if you are a high level weightlifter and you don't have any sort of wrist issues, I don't know if you're training that much, because like everybody that I know in weightlifting has wrist issues. So
Yeah. It is funny how that's. I mean, you mentioned Max earlier, right? That was the end of his show. Was wrist issues.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's a big one.
yeah. So we got you to the Arnold where you competed and discovered the leather wrist wrap. Tell us about your career moving forward.
Yeah, so I did. I think I competed pretty well at that Arnold. It's kind of funny. The Arnold used to be, for weightlifting, used to be pretty cool. Um, I think that was the last year they did it this way, but it used to be basically it was an unsanctioned meet. It wasn't a national level meet. It was still a lot of the top lifters went because they gave out cash prizes, and they ran it as like a local meet. So they still put it into USA Weightlifting as like a local meet, but they could give out these cash prizes. And so I think they gave out cash prizes to like first through, I would say first through eighth place. And now this is eighth place regardless of weight class. This is not, in each category. And so the way it would work is based on your, I think it was Sinclair coefficient at the time. Now they would probably do it based on Roby points. But based on your Sinclair coefficient, which is, how much, basically it's like Wilks for powerlifting, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's how they would decide who won. And so they would have all the top like entry totals lift on the same stage together. So I was competing against guys that weighed more than me, less than me, didn't matter. It was just all the top guys. And anyways, I remember that was my first ever Arnold night. I ended up taking eighth place. So I'm like, oh yeah, cash prize. So I looked up what the prizes were, and it starts out like 10 grand for first place. So I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. Eighth place was next year's entry fee. And so then we get to next year, and they changed it. So they made it a national meet, and so they couldn't give out these cash prizes anymore, which I don't understand why that's a thing, but it is. But anyway, so I messaged like the meet director, and I was like, hey, I'm supposed to get my entry fee waived. How does that work? He's like, what's your cash app? He just literally cash apps me $100 or whatever. So that's pretty funny. And then the next year, Arnold was probably my best meet ever. And that, I have another funny story. Sorry, I got a lot of these little funny stories with Arnold. So I had kind of heard as we were leading up to the Arnold, people were saying, hey, they're not doing cash prizes this year. Like that's not a thing anymore. So they would have these guys from Colombia and like South America come every year and compete at the Arnold, and they would win every freaking year. It was like these two guys that would come, and they would win the money. Like it was like 10 grand for first place, 5 grand for second place, something like that. And anyways, the one guy's name was Yadier Caseta, and he was in my weight class. I got second at this meet, and he beat me by I don't know, probably 30 kilos. And I think my total was like a 320 kilo total. And he probably did like 350. Now, you know, like going back to what we talked about earlier. But anyways, so we were sitting in, so I got drug tested. So he got drug tested too, which I don't know. I don't know the results of that test. But anyway, so we're sitting on this couch in a hotel room. So it's like a suite. And his coach at the time was this guy named Steve Galvan. And so let's say I was sitting on the far left of it's more like a love seat, honestly. My wife was sitting to the right of me. Steve Galvan was sitting to the right of her. And then Yadier was on the far end. We're all sitting on this couch together. And Steve turns and he looks at me and he goes, he thinks he just won 10 grand. But I found out on the car ride over here, the Uber ride, that they're not doing that this year. And I don't have the heart to tell him.
Like, forward to like, hey, bro.
Well, he didn't speak English. So Steve is speaking to me in English, and the guy's right to us. I mean, literally sitting right next to him, hip to hip. But he's telling me, he's like, I found out before the competition, but I didn't have the heart to tell him before he was about to compete. And so I'm looking at him and I'm like questioning what this test is about to say anyways. And I'm looking at him and I'm like telling Steve, I'm like, that's fine. Just don't tell him while I'm still in the room. Like, wait till I'm gone. Cause I knew it, but that poor guy, he's like, he flew all the way from, wherever he's from. I think it was Venezuela or Colombia to compete and win that money. And he ain't getting anything.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's one thing that we've talked about. Like, obviously we don't necessarily have the capital to do it, but like try to just get, whether it's federation or completely unsanctioned, but it's like, let's start getting some competitions that are for the lifters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like get some sponsorship that the people running it aren't necessarily making money hand over fist. Like the people that actually earn the money.
Yeah, it's funny because sports really only ever grow when money goes back to the athletes. And so, like I know you don't make a huge amount of money hosting a powerlifting meet or a weightlifting meet, but man, if you set yourself a bar of like 30% goes back to, the first place or the biggest Wilks or the biggest Roby or whatever, right? Like, I think that would have a really big impact on the sport. I think you'd get a lot more people out to do crazy stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, strongman does. Like, I feel like they've always been good about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I have buddies that have ran USAPL meets, and it's like it was almost like you said, like they never really, like the meet director, the person like the state head never really tells you because they don't know how much they're gonna make, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was like, I didn't even make enough to cover the janitor's fee. Like I lost cash after, like I lost money running a meet.
It can be pretty volatile for sure.
Right. So.
I think with weightlifting, it's because it's part of this the Olympic sports in the United States, right? And everything has to be like this certain way, and that's why when it became a USAW national meet, the Arnold, they couldn't give out these cash prizes, which is just so bizarre, to be honest. But yeah, I think it has something to do with that for sure. Like strongman is its own. It has its own federation, its own thing, right? And they can do whatever they want. But USA Weightlifting is super, like, they're super structured in what they can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which always seemed like a weird, like, self-imposed limitation to put on your sport. Like, I'm sure there's reasons for it and stuff, but I always want sports that I love to grow. So,
have you guys ever seen that documentary, The Weight of Gold?
I don't think I have.
So if you haven't seen that, that's another good one. I think that one's on HBO. It's really about like mental health in athletes in Olympic sports. I believe it's been a while since I've seen it, but there's a high amount like per capita of suicide within Olympic athletes, just because of the nature of the sport and like how hard the training is, and then the moment of glory that you get is very short, or sometimes it never comes. So you do all the work for nothing. And then the point is like, there's not a lot of pay along the way. if any. So you're really just not. It's like you're putting in a ton of work for just so very little potentially at the end of the day. And I think it's a great documentary for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you really like, let's just say it was like somebody that worked through like up to the first Olympics into the second one, like that's at least 6 years, right? Probably 8 years. And then obviously you probably did training before that to get to the level you would even be attempting it. But like, unless you're doing stuff on the side, which you're probably not, like you're going to exit that with basically no skills,
Yep.
work ethic, kind of, but
Right.
not even work ethic that works in a business,
Yeah.
right? Like you're super like self-driven, but that's not really like team setting, right? And you're never going to meet anybody that's driven like that. You're
Right.
going to have to put up with freaking Fred who leaves halfway through every Friday, and you know what I mean? Like it's a terrible, like what, you know, it does set you up for some pretty hard shit.
Yeah, we've
know?
talked to quite a few guests about, not being so focused on the mountain that you don't have an eye on what's next, So like if if it's to be a national weightlifting competitor or it's to go to the Olympics or to go to the World's Strongest Man or whatever, like have the next 6 months planned too. Like what am I going to do after I do this thing? Like what are my next goals on the ladder? Because it is real easy to be like, okay, well I did Everest and now there's no more mountains,
Right.
Like
Yeah. That's an issue. Like I think obviously the NFL has a lot of money to do lots of things, but I believe that that's a thing now. Is that when people get drafted, they
entrance and exit counseling.
start talking about like, okay, awesome,
Yeah.
but like 2% make it a career.
Yeah.
Like you're probably gonna fail out here pretty quickly. So what are we gonna do? So that's cool, but not everybody has NFL. Nobody has NFL money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think, the big thing is when you get done with your weightlifting career, if you get done with your football career, you're going to have a ton of money, most likely. You're going to have some money, even if you signed 1 year rookie contract.
You could at least go to college.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
you could
have
pay
the
for
money,
college.
like just
Yeah,
don't have a job, go to college, start your life.
Yeah.
That way. Like
where weightlifting or Olympic sport, like you might have literally $0 because it's funny because you actually, with these sports, you probably have to train more than some of these team sports. And you actually are going to make basically no money. So it's a catch-22 because, and this is kind of what I go back to when I say I got started late. Like I was hitting my stride right as I had to start going into the real world and like working and, not being able to just live at home and,
get married, buy a house, all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. I hit all those things hit right as I was kind of hitting my stride in the sport. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And yeah, unfortunately I didn't have, a trust fund to keep me going. So I just think that a lot of people don't realize how grueling mentally Olympic sports can be.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes also like when you win, right? Like obviously it's going to be like a great like self, like you'd be proud of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cherish it. But like I feel like in other countries and to an extent us a while ago, like Olympic champions were heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But like I would challenge most, like I bet you we could go on the street and ask for an hour. Like name one Olympic champion, not name Simone Biles or Michael Phelps.
Usain Bolt, I did
You know
it.
what I mean? I'm an American. Like
Yeah.
no,
you're right.
But, you know what I mean? Like there's most people would not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're gonna say those couple of names because they're headlines, right?
Yeah.
So you come back, like you feel like you're a national hero, and it's like I feel like there was a story about that. There was like a gold medalist, and he went into a Wendy's. I don't remember who he was, but he was like trying to like hurry up, and he's like,
Jordan
I just
Burroughs.
won. Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was wrestling, and he's like, I just won. And they were like, no, you fucking didn't. And he's like, look, like I've got the medal right here, and they're like, oh shit, like this is awesome. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like, so I don't know that like to work all of that time, and then to realize like deep down, no one gives a shit.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, like that.
That's why you got to love it.
That starts to weigh, you know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, you got to do it because you love it.
It doesn't take a long time to fall into depression.
No,
like, and then it's pretty hard to climb out of that.
Yeah,
and then your body's beat up too, right? Because a lot of these sports are highly repetitive. Like basketball, yeah, it's going to beat you up, but you're doing different things every second. Like you're running and
Yep.
moving, and it's all like weightlifting is the same motion over and over and over again, right?
Yep.
Like a lot of these sports, they're just so like you're literally practicing the same move. I mean, swimming, it's just the same move all over and over and over again. So it's a pretty monotonous thing if you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, which again is why you got to love it. You got to love being in the process and, doing the thing. Otherwise, it's not a good time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, um, you haven't been competing for a few years, right?
No, so the last meet I did was during COVID. It was one of those like online meets where
Yeah.
you're like on a Zoom call it was literally a Zoom. It was a national meet too. It was like a Zoom
Yeah.
nationals or something like that. So
Zoom piss test. Like, can you put your wiener in front of the camera, please? Like,
yeah, so dumb, man. So dumb.
And did you stop competing just because you were going through the phase of your life where you're trying to start your businesses and get the family going and stuff, or like what? How's come we went from competing to not competing?
Yeah, so I'd say it's a bit of a couple things, mainly injuries. I was getting in really good shape for would have been the Arnold in 2022, I think. I was in really, really good shape. And just I started having this low back hip issue. Um, and literally I have not been able to get rid of it since. I actually had hip surgery 6 months ago, basically today, 6 months ago.
Were you like cleaning up a labrum or something, or what did
Yeah,
you?
clean
I mean, to
clean
jump
up a
around.
labrum and a big cam lesion. So basically a big
Okay.
bone spur
Mhm.
on the hip. So the problem with the surgery is they have to dislocate your hip to do the surgery.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's monstrous.
yeah. So anyways, I'm coming back from that right now, but all the other injuries that I've suffered, like I've just kind of worked through them. And just the problem with this one is it took away my mobility.
Hmm.
Like my hip mobility is really suffered, and that was already a weakness of mine. And leg strength was always a weakness, relative leg strength. Like I had to squat all the time to get my legs stronger. Um,
Better puller than presser.
yeah, I mean, longer legs, shorter torso,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So uh, it was all the things that I didn't need to happen. And then I think just I would get unmotivated. I had to train so hard. I mean, at the peak of my weightlifting career, I was doing 200 working reps of squats a week out of a rack. 200 working reps. So like not counting warm ups, like working volume, 200 reps a week. I mean, just insane volume that I had to do. And point is, like, I couldn't do that anymore. And I just didn't feel like I could continue to get better. Now, we chatted a little bit about it before, but possibly trying to make a comeback. That was why I got the surgery. Really, I mean, I could have lived my life without the surgery, but this was the only option to be able to regain my mobility because when you have a big bone spur on your hip, uh, like I couldn't internally rotate at all. Like
Hmm.
basically like 0 degrees of internal rotation because it would just jam.
But it's
So
okay because hip flexion is not important.
right. Internal rotation, man, that's what people don't realize. Like in weightlifting, you got to have a lot of internal rotation. I'm just not the most internal rotation biased guy. I'm pretty external rotation. I got my toes are pointed pretty far out, and I'd probably be a better power lifter, honestly.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about powerlifting is there's no real speed or age requirement. So if you get done with weightlifting, you can always switch gears.
Yeah, like I
I
said,
mean, we
I was just say
go
the
ahead.
only problem with that is I'm not strong enough either. That's why I was decent at weightlifting because I was pretty strong and I'm very athletic, like from all the sports that I played, like so I could pick up on things really quickly. I'm fast, you know, I very coordinated, and I'm pretty strong, so that makes for a pretty good weightlifter. But
Hmm.
you could be, no offense, guys, not super athletic and be a very good power lifter, right? Or be
Yeah,
very uncoordinated. Like it's like
yeah.
have you ever tossed a wrestler a ball? If they, it's like just saying.
Listen, our number one advice is for our powerlifters if you're standing, sit, and if you're sitting, lay down. So like you don't have to explain it to us. Like
Okay.
I just have powerlifters lying all over the place.
That is my favorite bit of like meat advice is kids are just standing around. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, we're just standing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
sit down.
Go
And then
get a snack
Yeah,
and
yeah.
go sit down somewhere.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
"Hey,
And
what
then,
are
and
you
then I
doing?
catch them sitting. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, you told me to sit down. I'm like, lay down.
You're burning energy here. But yeah, you know, I've met plenty of very good powerlifters that were atrocious athletes.
Yeah.
It kind of gets in the way as a high school strength coach, because we talked about this to a lot of people, but there's a lot of bias against deadlift, and a lot of it just comes from
Just that
just
people not knowing.
it is what it is, right? So we run into it a lot. But what always comes back to it is me trying to explain the deadlift to like strengthen the posterior chain to allow for the athletic gains to be there, right?
Mhm.
And then they'll point out some guy that, like, I won't call him out, but they'll point out one of my deadlifters that is a power lifter. They're like, he deadlifts over 500 pounds and he is terrible.
Yeah,
He's terrible. And it's like, I'm not saying that a big deadlift makes you a great athlete.
Yeah,
We're-
correlation, not causation, right?
God, it's the most frustrating thing ever. Like, they're like, look at him.
Well, it's funny because it's just kind of a hangover of like, people fall in love with their sport, not necessarily the barbell, right? And so, if you loved baseball, why would you want to be in the weight room? Or if you loved soccer, why would you want to be in the weight room? But like, I mentioned our coach got into it a long time ago, and he talked about he was coaching a wrestling team, and he made all of his kids lift weights, and they went undefeated for a year because they were the only school that was lifting weights, the only team that was lifting weights. You know how many teams weren't lifting weights the next year?
Right.
So
Exactly.
like, it's part of the game.
No, deadlifts, I see that a lot. Obviously, we're a private, company that trains a lot of athletes, and we do help out at a couple of schools locally. And yeah, man, they are scared shitless of deadlifts, and it's hilarious because a lot of them will do a hang clean, and they'll pick the bar up first, and I'm like, that's fucking weird. You did a deadlift, right? And then it's like, but I'm always just like, basically, what I explained it to him, like, so why are you okay with that? You're okay with that because it was a light deadlift, right? Well, just keep it a little bit lighter, right? It's all load dependent, right? So, anyways, yeah, we see that a lot.
That's the big thing. Like, I really feel like it's just a hangover of like a bygone era, and one day it won't really be an issue anymore. At least that's my hope, And I could be wrong. Who knows?
Well, then you get what's that dork that went on Rogan and said they were bad?
Robert.
Yeah, so that's not helping,
Yeah.
But I think
at the height of like those four, him,
Yes.
Shaw, like Best and freaking,
they're all doing the show on
the
History
most
Channel and
like
stuff.
the height of their popularity. Like they were the most popular guys in strength sports at that time.
Yeah.
Probably, you know what I mean? And he goes on and does that, and it was just like,
No, we did not need
what are
that.
they
Like,
talking
if
about?
you listen to his story, he's like, I coached myself. I didn't have any direction. I was maxing out on deadlift every week for a year and a half, and then I hurt my back. And it's like, okay, well,
Context.
yeah, context is really important. And I always feel like when people say they don't do deadlift or they don't want their athletes doing deadlift, like what I hear is just I don't know how to coach it.
Yep.
Like that's all I hear anymore.
Or just I'll try to keep this as general as possible because I don't want to dime the person out. But like, I have a kid. At some point in time in my 12 years, I've had a kid. I'll say that that his back hurt at about 400 pounds on deadlift, but he was clean in over 300 pounds. And it's like there's no fucking way
Exactly.
that you're not generating more force on your fucking back ripping 315 off the ground than you are at a 400 pound slow ass deadlift. It's just what it is. It's deadlift. Like that's
Well, so now every time we have a kid, like we have kids do deadlifts, especially like their first time ever doing them, I'm very like, when I walk them out or if there's a parent there, I'm like, hey, they're going to be sore tomorrow. Their back is going to be sore tomorrow. Like specifically their back is actually going to be sore. I don't care how flat of a back they kept the whole time. There's a lot of isometric contraction going on. And I just explained it to them like, hey, your back, it has muscles just like your legs do, just like your arms do. And we got to work them. Right. And, but it's like if their arms got super sore, they wouldn't think anything of it, but their back gets sore and it's like spinal, right? It's like Mike Tyson out here, right? It's like, oh, I used to get texts all the time or calls from parents and moms and be like, I think you injured my kid, his back's sore. It's like, dude, it's like we want their back to work too. Like, I don't understand why we don't want to work those muscles.
Yeah, it was funny. We had Trevor Kim on, and we just couldn't help ourselves. Kyle was like,
yeah.
"Is deadlift the devil?" And it's because like no better person to ask than the guy.
The spine
Yeah.
specialist.
Yeah.
And he was like, "I do a form of the deadlift every day." And
Yeah.
it was just like, we were like, we could stop the podcast now. We've accomplished our goal.
Yeah,
Right.
we made it.
Right.
But in the same context, like, yes, you probably shouldn't just be ripping heavy deadlifts off the ground with poor form. Like, that could lead to some injury, and you don't want to hurt your back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing too. Kids are the most resilient of all of us. Like, so
Yeah.
I agree with you, but it's like of all the people that could get away with like one small slip and form, it's kids, dude. Like, it's old people that are gonna, like us, that are gonna blow a disc. Like, I mean, not too often you see a 14-year-old, blow a disc. One, because he's like Gumby and everything's fresh, and then two, they don't have any weight on the bar yet. So
Yeah,
the point is that's the time to teach them, not when they're already old and decrepit.
You really want to blow someone's mind. Like, I've tried to show a couple of people, like, you have like Mike Israel showing people like purposeful bent back deadlift.
Yeah, some
you know what I
Jefferson
mean?
curls.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
so it's just like,
That's my whole life right now.
It's
I've
just
just been
like-
doing Jefferson curls forever, like sets of 15 with 300 pounds or whatever.
Because you want to work your back.
yeah. Guess what? When you go to a sport, your back doesn't.
Nah,
You're not playing linebacker.
Right.
yeah.
You
And
know,
it's
like,
also important,
shit's gonna
like,
bend.
to follow all the regular, guidelines for lifting weights. Like when I started doing Jefferson curls like 4 months ago or whatever, I started with 15 pounds. You know what I mean? Like no, it was a 10-pound plate. I used a 10-pound plate was my first set, and then I would just go up, 5 or 10 every workout or whatever. And
Now you do like 500 for 15.
still climbing, right? But like
Yeah.
you can do a ton if you just build some capacity.
You built a capacity. That's right.
Yeah. So, thinking about a rebound, are you working with people right now on your run back up, or are you just trying to get your mobility and stuff back and recover from your surgery and everything?
Yeah, so one of our coaches is and my buddy, he's a PT, so go to PT a couple times a week, still working through that. And then kind of just doing my own programming. It's still not where I want it to be. And that's kind of why I say comeback is, I'm not putting pressure on myself. So my whole life, I've just put pressure on myself to do things. And with weightlifting right now, I'm just not going to put pressure on myself. I'm going to try to keep it fun. I'm pretty good about not making things not fun. And so that's definitely not what I want to do right now with weightlifting. So we'll see where it takes me. At the end of the day, I haven't forgotten how to lift weights, dude. It's incredible, how, you can come back on some of these things, like even highly technical movements. So I'll just tell you, like, basically I've been cleared to start doing all the lifts again about a month ago. And, my first session back, I did 70 kilo snatch, 90 kilo clean jerk. I mean, super light stuff, right? And then I'm like, I'm going to add like 5 or 10 kilos every week and just kind of build a capacity. Well, then, of course, this kid was talking shit at the gym. And so I had to do a little bit more. Like, he snatched 95 kilos, so I snatched 100 because, I'm like, dude, that's some pussy shit. Like, I can snatch 100 and I'm like 2 weeks cleared from hip surgery, right? And then I think I did like 120 clean and jerk. And then the next week, another kid, different kid, snatched 117. And I'm like,
I took
all
that
right.
personally.
So then I had to snatch 120. So yeah, in 3 weeks I went 70, 100, 120. And then I clean and jerked, I think 145. So I'm back to 120, 145 in 3 weeks. So I don't know if that's advisable, but here we are.
We're doing it.
Coaches make the worst clients.
Oh,
Anyway.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
yeah.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time because I train like a crazy person. Like I've said it a million times on the podcast, but like if I don't feel like if my life doesn't flash before my eyes during a workout, then I don't feel like I'm having a good time. But I also hate taking deloads, so you can probably predict about how those training cycles go. You know what I mean? I get like 6 or 9 months in and tear something, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's rehab time again.
You described the line of injury and training. And I was just like, dude, that's been Kyle's life since I've known him. Like,
yeah, I'm trying really hard to be better about it, but I'm also like getting older. So like I tore a pulley in my finger just doing yard work. I was like, oh, apparently I need to warm up before I move rocks around in the yard or something, you know, just dumb stuff.
How old are you guys?
I'm 40.
I'm 37.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are old as shit. No, I'm just kidding.
Old as shit.
Dude. Listen, because
I'm taking that personal. I'm coming to your gym and we're gonna have a deadlift competition.
Oh, well,
I
you,
fucking look, I
I
look
can't
old.
snatch or clean, so
And then Cofield Kyle was like, "Oh, our coach." Every time he describes our coach, who was old when
we met
like
him.
he was at the end of his career when we met him, but he was like, "Oh, our coach was in the 40s," and I'm like, "This motherfucker's gonna think we're 60."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so we're not that old. 37. Listen, you're gonna be 37 real fast. Just
I hope
watch.
to make it to 60. I'm not gonna be mad about being 60.
I hope I make it a lot more than 60. Damn.
Well,
like,
yeah, me too. I'm just saying.
If
I'm not
I'm-
gonna knock it.
I'm 2/3 done right now. Sucks.
I feel like I might be 2/3 done. My body's fucked.
So, have you learned any? You're coming back at 30. Have you learned any lessons about your programming or your approach to training that you think you're going to try to implement differently now than the run before?
Answer that right now.
Yeah, honestly though, I've thought about that, and I think a lot of it's. I feel like maybe I'm so detrained that I can kind of restart this cycle of and kind of go the minimum effective dose route versus the
Yep.
maximum recoverable volume route.
Yep.
And I think that's the route I'll take. I definitely took the other route and then some the first way, and I think. I mean, I don't know how much science there is on this, but my theory is that I adapted to super high volumes of training, and basically just, where do you go from there, right? Like, my solution was just add more volume. So I'm going the other route is like, hey, let's basically progress on as little volume as possible, and then when you feel like I need to add a little bit, we'll add a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had powerlifting. He's the Australian national champion, Cody Wilkes, on, and he said that he was doing 50 sets of squat a week, and he was like every one of his lifts were 10 by 10s, like
Yeah.
just fueled off jacked 3D and milk. And now a few years removed, he does like 6
Mhm.
sets of squats, and he's having just the same amount of growth. off
That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing, like you mentioned, maybe doing that volume too early in your career, and there is something about like stacking on the years and then that kind of repeated bout effect, right? Like if you've done just super high volume forever, your body it's not as happy about it anymore. Like it doesn't want to do something new when you repeat that same, stimulus. So probably be good to make some changes.
I also think I got way too specific too quickly. It was very, very specific high volume training. Like, I mean, I was literally just back squatting and front squatting, right? And like, you can do a lot of other things training your legs. You could do lunges, you could do, obviously we have belt squat machine, whatever, right? And then my Olympic lifting was snatch, clean and jerk to relatively heavy singles multiple times a week. Like, my point is like, I basically, the way that I would, if I, when I have kids, hopefully, the way that I plan to kind of train them is minimum effective dose, to a point. But then really the biggest thing is like high degrees of general training. And basically stay general as long as possible, because it's kind of, to me, it's the same idea as like, you don't want to go too high volume right away, right? You want to kind of like delay that as long as you can. And then same thing, you don't want to specialize too early. I want to stay general. So for me, it would be like, hey, let's start doing some weird shit for a while and just see if that translates over. And then when it stops translating over to snatch, clean, and jerk, then we stop doing it and we do more of snatch, clean, jerk or whatever, right? I think that, back in the day, that's just not what I had already done. A lot of general training, right, through CrossFit and through my sports growing up. So that's where I saw the most progress was, dude, when I switched from CrossFit to weightlifting, I mean, my total went up like 100 kilos in like a year. It was insane because I had just done so much general training and then I went specific. So that if I had to go back, I would probably just stay and do more general training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Spencer Arnold kind of said similar things, was like, even if he sees someone that's going to be great eventually, he just lets them like, just keep doing your thing, whatever it is. If you're a basketball player or a football player, just keep doing that for as long as you can. Eventually that sport will tell you it's time.
Yep.
And you'll be done. And then we'll take all that training. We'll specialize in weightlifting, and he has success doing it that way. So,
and if you're athletic, like you'll make that transition relatively quickly. Like, you know, if you're a good athlete, like you'll, like I don't know that my technique in weightlifting can get a ton better. I'm sure there's small tweaks that can, you know, I can make here and there, and I get a bad habit here or bad habit there. But overall, I'm pretty technically efficient. So at the end of the day, it just becomes, you know, how much volume can I tolerate, and how, you know, strong can I make the muscles that are putting me through these positions. And so my point is like, there kind of is a limit on how good your technique can get. It's like if you're shooting a basketball and you made it 100 out of 100 times, like, you know, it's really not that's not the limiting factor. And so I think a lot of people just need to focus on generality. And then like, if you're a good athlete, again, your technique will get there pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you really dial up the specificity for technical stuff, like, I mean, I guess it's everything comes with the it depends addendum, right? Like, if you have somebody around who really understands the lifts, like really, really, really deeply understands them, like you can probably get a lot of juice out of working on technical stuff. But like, if you have if you don't have access to that, right, then you could probably go in every day and make it a technique session and not make nearly as much progress as you would if you just for 9 months tried to get as big and as strong as you could, and then 3 months just tried to go as heavy as you could. Like you'd probably get more juice out of the squeeze just going after that.
100%. I don't agree with Ripito on much, but the one thing he did say that does make a strong point to at least our weightlifter, our athletes, is like, if you can't deadlift it, you definitely can't clean it. Right? Yeah. Like, if you can't pick it off the ground, you're not gonna be able to clean it.
Yeah. Yeah. True words. It's interesting too, because so much of your ability to perform, like, your current thing's mostly about sport performance, right?
Yep.
I know we've talked a lot about weightlifting, but about sport performance. And if you get an athlete in your weight room and you just push them to be a better and better and better, low bar back squatter or whatever, you'll definitely see like, hey, they did get a little more athletic. Like, they seem like they're a little more resilient in their sport. They can maintain positions better. They got maybe a little more power or whatever. But then all of that will go away pretty fast, because you go from developing those general qualities of just having more muscle and everything to developing skill as a low bar back squatter, right?
Yep.
And so like, having that variety is a good way to keep your athletes growing, and yourself as an athlete, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I had said, like the deadlifter is not a good athlete. Like,
right.
It's also like, there's going to be we'll go to the squat, like getting a 200 to a 300 pound squat, we'll say, for a football player is massive.
Yeah.
A 300 to a 400, very big.
Yeah.
400 to a 500, it's probably pretty.
If you're on the line, maybe. Yeah.
5 to 6, like, all right, you're strong enough to push people around,
right?
Like,
I think a big part of that is because much of what's happening early on is the hypertrophy of the leg muscles, right, or the back muscles in the deadlift. And then as you get better or more qualified, it becomes more of a skill acquisition thing. And like you said, the skill of squatting low bar doesn't matter. Like, having a strong back, having strong hips, having strong legs, that's what matters. So basically what you're saying is like, we want to get that part of it out of there, and then there's a point of diminishing returns where it's like, how much work do we need to put in to make our legs stronger, and through doing this exercise, maybe we could do a different exercise to make our legs even stronger, right? Versus now you're just trying to become the best skilled deadlifter or low bar squatter.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I think everybody kind of has their lane, right? Everybody in strength training we have a powerlifting background, weightlifting background, CrossFit, whatever. But like, really, like, if you could express like leg strength just in like units somehow, like if you could just like cross section and be like, you're this strong, doesn't really matter how the fuck you got there.
Right.
If you just were like a huge lunge guy, like if you get to that overall, like the absolute strength that you need to play the sport, like awesome.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
made it there. Like, whether that was being a power lifter or a general practitioner or CrossFit, whatever. Now you do normally have to do something hard
Mm-hmm.
to get there.
Yeah.
It's not normally just going to be from like air squats.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
So, what big lessons did you take out of being an athlete that you put towards your new, your new goals, like the gym, the podcast, the family? What tools did you take from your career that you're using now?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest one, you had kind of mentioned that quote beforehand. We have on our wall it just says whatever it takes. And a lot of times my old coach, so before I worked with Max, I had a coach named Lou DeMarco. He was an old dude, like 82 years old when he was coaching me, and he would just yell like whatever it takes when you're up there. And really to me what that means is everybody is going to have to do things a little bit differently to see the same result, right? Like I guarantee you I had to train harder than a lot of people to get just pretty good at weightlifting, right? Um, and so I'm sure somebody would have to train even harder than me. And this is the same thing in life, right? Like we all have different starting points. Um, but if you want something, you got to not have you have to not set boundaries on what you're going to have to do to achieve that goal, right? So I think a lot of people, I think in life, the biggest issue people have is that they set boundaries and they say, I shouldn't have to do this to achieve this, right? Like I shouldn't have to answer the phone on the weekends. If I own a gym, like I should be able to turn my phone off on the weekends, right? Or I should be able to, at 10 o'clock at night, not answer an email. I should do that, whatever. That's fine. You can have that opinion, whatever. But for me, I feel like that's what it takes to have the gym that I want to have and have the business that I want to have. And I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm not willing to do this thing. Like I think a lot of people it's like, I'm willing to do this. It's like, no, I want this goal. I want, for me, it was to win a national championship. And to get what it took for that was to do 200 working reps of squats. Like I think a lot of people would say that's crazy, but it's what I had to do at the time to see any progress in my leg strength. Right. And so I think everybody just has a different amount that they have to work to get to maybe the same goal. So it's have a goal, and then do whatever it takes to get to that goal. Right. I think more people need to learn that it's like you might have to do a lot of things that you don't want to do to get to your goals.
yeah, that's not even bad life advice. Like when you're setting goals, you probably should look at what does it realistically take. And there might be times, like we come across it quite a bit. Like there might be things like, oh, that seems like it's really cool. What's it going to cost? Like, and we're both in the time right now where it's like, if that cost is time from family, not a goal.
Yeah.
It's just not, because we talk about all the time is like, we're using this, right? We're trying to use this to grow into a space that we can have more time.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes no sense to then leverage the time we have with our children now when they're young,
Right.
to get more time for when they're 18, 19 and they're on their own lives. Like, so it's whatever it takes, but you got to look at that. Like sometimes that's going to take, like, you kind of like the end of your weightlifting career. You looked at it and you were like, that's not it anymore. Like I want to start my family and stuff like that. Like not everybody all the time
Mm-hmm.
is gonna want, but that's fine. Like I feel like that's fine, I guess, unless you're just always spouting off that you're going to be the greatest and you don't want to put in the work. Like I don't want to say,
my lane.
I don't want to say that, but like it is all right to set goals and then realistically look like, okay, like that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I decided at some point in my weightlifting career it wasn't what it took, or it was not worth what it took, right, to achieve the goals, right? But I learned what it took, and I knew what it took, and I wasn't unrealistic about what it took, right? And I think that a lot of people they think that
Yes.
that it's like a math equation, right? You do X, you do Y, you do Z, you get a different this result. And it's just everybody's equation is going to be different. And if you want the results, you got to just put in the numbers that are going to get to that equation. And you have to decide if that's worth it or not to you. Right. And for me, I realized at some point that the trade-offs that, of, my marriage and my future, my business life and financial situation was not worth, devoting 5 hours a day to training anymore.
Yeah.
And that's one thing with like the Instagram world right now. Everybody immediately sets like the crazy, like most people like learn about heavy shit gradually.
Yeah.
You're like, who's the strongest guy in the gym? And then maybe you go to the meet and you're like, oh, that guy was fucking way stronger. And then, you know what I mean? Like you learn about the crazy stuff gradually. Nowadays, you just see the 2,500 pound totals
Yeah.
right away, right? So everybody's goal is immediately like to be the absolute best. But I think it was Zach Bartell had said like, no one sees the come up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everybody's 100% best. And so like you have to understand that you're looking at
10 or 20
decades
years
of work for everybody, decades of work plus sometimes loose testing. You know what I mean? Like, so like again, like that is a whatever it takes, right? Like that's
100%.
you have to make that decision.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to make that decision. Just don't, if you do make that decision, whatever. Like I'm not a person, I don't judge someone that's on steroids. Just you
Right.
better not be competing against fucking clean people.
And that's where, like, I guess technically whatever it takes to win the Olympics is probably to move to a new country and take steroids, right? So like I was not willing to do what it took for that goal, right? And I think business is really where I see it the most. Is I just think a lot of people, I mean, I don't know, what are the stats? Like 9 out of 10 small businesses fail, right, within a certain amount of time. And I think it's just simply because people aren't willing to do what it takes. I think that's the biggest thing is like, if somebody calls them in the middle of the night and there's an issue, like they're just like, it's the middle of the night, I shouldn't have to do this. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like that does not, like, it's not, you're not owed anything, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a book by a human that I'll forget. I'll come back around. It might have been maybe
It's a lot better than those aliens.
but it's extreme ownership. It's Jocko Willink.
Jocko,
Yeah, and that's it. He's not saying whatever it takes. He's extreme ownership, but it's the same thing. Like if you have any part in anything, like doing your best to make sure that every piece of that doesn't mean going outside your lane, but you can't be running a business and be like the permit people are fucking me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's not gonna work. Like, so do every other goddamn thing that you humanly could do. You know what I mean? Like, so I really enjoyed that book. It almost was depressing reading it because it's like every chapter you're like, this is how you should live your life, and then you like try to actually do it, and it's like this guy's a maniac. Like, he's like the most disciplined human in fucking history.
But I mean, you work with kids, right?
Like, yeah.
So like, there's 2 kids. They could do equal amounts of training and get 2 different results.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All the time. Well, so my thought is like, you basically, the way you have to preface it to them is, what do you want? What do you want the result to be? And you have to work backwards from there. Is you have to say, hey, like for me, I wanted to be, the best basketball player in our conference or whatever, it was. I wanted to be an all-state player. In the state of Illinois, that was tough because we had Chicago schools. I'm a 5'8" white guy. Like I had to work a lot harder than certain guys did, but I didn't say, oh, well, I'm only willing to work as hard as this guy. It's like, no, I wanted this result. So I had to do what it takes to hit that result. Right. And so I think that's whatever it takes is mainly we gear it towards our athletes. And we say like, I understand that you're having to train a lot harder than this guy, but how bad do you want it?
Yep.
Yeah, and it is just the nature of the beast. I mean, ultimately everything's individual. Like you're not gonna be the same as everybody else, no matter how you slice it.
Yep.
Yeah, and you might try harder than everybody and not get it, not get your goal.
100%.
Not everything is guaranteed.
Which is why you got to love the process.
You got to love the process. You got to be there for the process.
That's right.
Yeah, I feel like that's the flip side to the thing that I always tell kids. Like I get kids who are like, I teach like upper level math classes. So I get kids who are like 4.0s and they got a job and they do sports and they're in theater and, they have their whole life full front to back. And then they they come to me one day because stuff is starting to fall apart, and I'm just like, man, kid, you cannot ride 2 horses with one ass. Like, you got to figure out which things are important to you, right? Because in this case, whatever it takes isn't an option. You'd be working 29 hours a day. It just doesn't exist. You gotta decide what's important.
Well, I think whatever it takes is getting rid of one of those things. I think that's what it takes, right? So I think it applies. It's just deciding what is it that it takes, and are you willing to do that?
Yeah. Because
just
it's really a heavy issue of prioritizing.
Yeah,
right?
the maturity to sit down. Like, if you just took into every goal, like whatever it takes, like that's going to take a lot of maturity to understand. Like, oh, like that means I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, I feel like we did it. I feel like if I start a new topic, we're going to go another 45 minutes.
No, this was good.
This is good. 125.
Yeah.
We've been keeping it right around 130 all of a sudden.
Yeah.
This is a new thing for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Would you hang out for a minute after we say goodbye?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Jared, where can they find you at? How can we benefit you?
Yeah.
Your stuff.
The gym account, gym stuff, Richmond Elite Performance is my gym. We go by rep, but I think the account is Richmond Elite Performance. My e-commerce business that we create the best leather wrist straps in the world is Richmond Weightlifting. I think it's richmond.weightlifting on Instagram. And then I think my personal account, which I do not do a ton with, is JJ Richmond 23, I believe.
Do you still have that email if somebody wants the other wrist wraps? If they want the rusty.
You know what? That's a great question. I should look. I bet I could find it.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that last joke there. Like, comment, subscribe. Helps out the show a ton. We really appreciate it. All right. Stop.